Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempests rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whatever may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fitted for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely. Assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things. Give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait. Her strength unequal to her task, rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod. As brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God. Good evening. Let's edify one another, shall we? Welcome to another edition of Study to Show Ourselves Approved, which is what we try to do here each and every day. Study to show ourselves approved unto God, a workman that need not be ashamed, handling aright the word of God. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. We are in our study entitled Beginning at the Beginning, studies or lessons from Genesis. And we pick up the Bible. We turn our pages to Genesis chapter 31. Our study begins as we see Jacob. He has been keeping the flocks of Laban again, or still. Remember, he served 7 years for Rachel, only to have Laban change his wages by giving him Leah instead. And so he served another 7 years for Rachel. And so we have him 14 years in. And during those last 7 years, he received several children of the Lord. I said last week, I kept getting it wrong because Leah had 4 children. Yes, 4 children. Prior to the issue with the handmaids, she had Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and then Judah, and I had missed Judah. Then she left off. So in 4 years, she had 4 children. Rachel had 0. And so Rachel gives her handmaid Bilhah to Jacob, saying, "Here, conceived by her, and she'll bear a son on my knees, and therefore it'll be my son." And so that's what happened. And Bilhah conceived, bare a son, and Rachel named his name Dan. And then Naphtali came along roughly a year later. Leah gives Zilpah. Zilpah has two sons, Gad and Asher. And then Leah again begins bearing sons. So we have roughly, that covers those 7 years, and maybe a couple extra. So about this time, Rachel accuses, Rachel has accused Jacob of saying, "Hey, give me sons and give me children." And Jacob's like, "No, it's not my problem. It's not my fault." Obviously, it wasn't his fault because he'd had children by Leah, and then after the accusation, he had children by Bilhah and Zilpah. And Rachel's doing everything she can to have children, and she's not able to have children. So, finally, Jacob asked Laban to send him away in verse 25 of chapter 30, as we recap. By this time, Leah has had an additional, an additional 2 sons. And that is Issachar and Zebulun, and then had Dinah. And God finally opened Rachel's womb, and Rachel bore Joseph. How much time is there? We don't know exactly. We know that for sure Jacob has labored for quite a while for Laban, and Laban is now getting jealous. Jacob wants to go. Laban says, "No, God's blessed you richly, blessed me richly for having you here. Stay here and keep my cattle." And Jacob agrees for a little bit to stay for a little while longer. And so for several more years, Jacob takes care of the cattle. Now, starting in 31, Laban's sons get upset because they realize that Laban's cows, his herds are getting weaker, and Jacob's are the better herds. And Laban's sons are like, there's nothing left for us. And Jacob sees that Laban and his sons are not kindly taken to him anymore. By the way, hello, Reba. Hello, Teresa, Maureen. Good to see you all here. So you see here in verse 31 and verse 1 that, the Laban and his sons, they're just not really kindly. They're not favorable towards Jacob. And Jacob realizes, okay, if I go to Laban, he's going to throw a fit. He's going to do something. He's not that great of a father-in-law. So God says to Jacob, it's time to return unto the land of your fathers, to your kindred. I will be with you. So Jacob sends to Rachel and Leah and calls them out to the field. What better place to have a secret council than where in the open field where nobody is going to overhear you? I mean, you're in the field in the midst of your flock. You got all the bleating going on around, and so it's really going to be difficult to overhear. Plus, you're going to see anybody that's trying to sneak up on you anyway. So Jacob calls Rachel, Leah into the field and says, hey, listen, your dad's he doesn't like me anymore. Welcome again, Teresa. He doesn't like me anymore, but God's been with me. And you know that I've served with everything I had. I've served your father. I've given everything I have. And your father's deceived me, changed my wages 10 times. But God's not let him hurt me. So, and Jacob gives specific examples. If he says the speckled should be your wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. If he said the ring straked, all the cattle were ring straked. Thus, God has taken away the cattle of your father, given them to me. Now, we know that, in the prior chapter, as we look here, let's see here. Verse 37, Jacob's taken rods of green poplar and the hazel, chestnut tree, peeling them in white streaks and making the white appear. And so that he's setting these before the flock so that he's getting speckled and ring straked, and, spotted cows and sheep. But he recognizes and he appeals, he gives credit to where credit is due. He says it is God's providence. It's God's looking out for me. Good afternoon, Gloria. So Laban deceived me, changed my wages 10 times, but God would not let him hurt me. If he said it's ring streaked and it's speckled, well, everything was speckled. If it said ring streaked, that just means if it was ringed, striped, well, then everything was striped. There's, by the way, a particular breed of cattle called the Galloway, belted Galloway cows that are black on either end, and there's a ring, a white band of hair all the way around the middle. And my mom and dad have a few of them. My sister had before she moved back to Georgia. But belted Galloway, and so that's when I think ring streak. That's exactly what I'm looking at. I'm looking at like a belted Galloway, and I wish I could show you just what I'm talking about. And maybe I can. So what you see here are belted Galloways. So when you look at thinking ring-straked cows, this is what you're talking about. This is the type. There we go. Ta-da! Hello, Heather. So these, when Jacob says ring-straked, this is similar to what he's talking about. These are belted Galloway cows. Just so you have an idea of does that help you guys to be able to picture in your mind? So Jacob's saying, there we go. God, God gave me when Laban said the ring strakes are going to be yours. Well, then that's exactly what he gave me, ring straked. And God hath then taken away the cattle of your father, given it to me. And so he says, at the time that the cattle conceived, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. I said, here I am. He said, lift up now thine eyes and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointed the pillar, and where thou vowedst a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out of this land, return unto the land of thy kindred. So Rachel and Leah, understanding Jacob is telling them, God has told me it's time to leave. And Rachel and Leah says, husband, there's nothing left for us here. We're counted as strangers because he's sold us. And he's already devoured everything that he's gotten from us. So whatever God's told you to do, go right ahead and do it. I want you to understand this is these few verses 1 through not 1 through verses 4 through 15, 16. verses 4 through 16 is exactly the picture of the marriage relationship that Ephesians 5 depicts. A husband who consults his wife, treats her with honor and respect and dignity. And the woman, the wife, who in turn treats him as Lord, offers their valuable opinion, and is in subjection. Did he try to bully his way through? Did he say, "Up, we're leaving right now. Get your stuff packed and let's go"? No. I doubt you'd say that of anything there. He lets them know exactly where things stand. He doesn't keep them in the dark. He talks to them as equals in this relationship. I never really looked at it this way until, just today as I was preparing for class. But as you look at this 4 through 16, that's exactly what it is. A husband who loves his wives. In this case. In our case today, it will be a husband who loves his wife. And the wife answers and gives her input. Whatever God has told you to do, do. Beautiful thought there. So Jacob rises up, sets his sons and his wives upon camels. The oldest of his son would be a minimum of 14 years, probably closer to 20. We'll get to that in just a minute. So he sets his sons and wives on camels. He takes all of his cattle and all of his goods, which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting, which he had gotten in Padan Aram, in verse 18. And he sets out to go see Isaac. Heads back to Canaan. Now, he does this when Laban goes to shear his sheep. Remember, there's a minimum. Okay, we're going to put that right here. Go back over here to verse 36. There is 3 days' journey between Jacob and Laban. This is of Laban's own choosing. Laban sets 3 days' journey betwixt him and Jacob. And so Jacob then sets all of his cattle in, this is all 3 days away. Did Sister Penny bring out this, Sister T? I'm glad you went through Sister Penny's class. Hopefully, you get a really good, rich, in-depth study of Genesis by putting the two of ours together. She teaches one way with her points. I'm going to teach with mine. And a lot of times they're going to come through and they're going to be the same because we're using the same text. Sometimes they're going to be different. And if she had something interesting to add, feel free to throw it up there in chat. So Laban goes 3 days. Laban goes to shear his sheep. He's 3 days away. Rachel takes that opportunity to steal the images that were her father's. These images are the gods, the cherubim, the teraphim, the idols that were her father's. So we know that Laban is not a worshiper of God, even though he recognizes that Jacob is a worshiper of God. And it's also interesting that, or it shows that Laban is polytheistic. Now that's a fancy word meaning multiple gods. Poly meaning many and theistic meaning gods. So he worships many gods, and he just simply kind of includes God, Jehovah in amongst the rest of his. It's the same type of a scenario that we see in Athens in Acts chapter 17, where they have the altar to the unknown God in amongst all the others that they have. So Rachel steals these images. And what you kind of see is, not that I'm condoning this, but what you see is Rachel here, she's upset because of this. For all the riches that which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then whatsoever, or not that, excuse me. She says, there's no portion or inheritance for us in our father's house. There's nothing left for us here. We're strangers because he sold us and he's devoured our money. He's devoured everything that would have been ours. And so she goes as kind of a revenge, and she steals the images. So she steals those images. Jacob, 3 days, remember, again, I'm going to keep pounding that. He's 3 days away from the flocks of Laban. So news is going to take at least 3 days to get to Laban that Jacob has gone. Jacob steals away unawares to Laban, in that he told him not that he fled. So he just ups and leaves. And he leaves with all that he has. He rises up, he passes over the river, sets his face toward Mount Gilead. And on 3 days later, word reaches Laban. So Jacob's got a 3-day head start. Why do I think it was revenge? Why else would she steal the images that were her father's when Jacob is a worshiper of God? And he would run his household to a similar effect. And as I pointed out, they say there's no inheritance. There's a bit of bitterness going on between the daughters and their father. Is what I was pointing out. There's nothing left for us. He's devoured all of our inheritance, all of our money. Right there in verse 15. That's the reason why I'm thinking there's a bit of revenge. Not that it was all revenge. Because there is the possibility that she still was worshiping these idols. Maureen. Absolutely, they felt used by their father. As you can see right here, are we not counted of him strangers? The fact that that Laban treated them as if they were strangers means that he didn't treat them as daughters anymore. And then you note that Leah and Rachel say, because he hath sold us as if we were possessions. as if we were nothing to him. That's the mindset behind these words. He has sold us and quite devoured also our money, as if we don't, as if we're nothing. So they're saying, okay, he's sold us, he's devoured our money, and the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. So basically they're saying whatever God took from Laban and gave to you, that's ours and our children's. So whatever God said unto you, do. They're looking at it now in verse 16 as if it was justice. Does that make sense? Let's see here. In verses 5 through 9, Jacob airs his grievance to them. I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before. In other words, your father doesn't like me anymore. He doesn't regard me with favor as he did before. When I first came, remember how Laban, when Jacob first came there, let's look at 29 verse 15. Laban says to Jacob, because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? This is the attitude you're doing. You're my kinsman. I'm not going to let you just serve me for nothing. Jacob's been there for a whole month, and he's like, okay, Jacob's been working. I made the point back in that class. Jacob's been doing things for Laban, working, taking care of his cattle, whatever it was. And Laban says, well, I can't let you do this for nothing. I got to pay you. What do you want? And so Jacob says, well, let me have Rachel. I'll serve you 7 years. I'll work for you for 7 years, and you give me Rachel. Because I don't, because Jacob didn't have any bride price. Laban says, it's better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me. So Laban treated Jacob with favor in Genesis 29 when he first got there. That's a far cry from what we see over here in Genesis 31. In 31 and verse 5, and 6, Laban's not regarding Jacob with that same favor anymore. He doesn't like him anymore. And neither does Laban's sons. Because Laban's sons were saying, Jacob's taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's, he gained all this wealth. In other words, they're just about ready to lynch Jacob and take away all that wealth by force. If they continued for much longer, that's probably where that would go. That's kind of the idea or the sentiment that is implied through this. There was a lot of animosity growing in the household of Laban. And so Jacob airs that, as in he relates that to Rachel and Leah. And he then also speaks that God wouldn't let Laban hurt him. And even though he served Laban with every ounce of his being for all the time that he's been with Laban, and Laban's changed his wages 10 times. We know that he changed his wages for Leah for Rachel, or Rachel for Leah. There we go. He swapped the two brides around. That was once. Um, then he's done with all the different cattle. And so what other ways, I don't know, but I do know that there was differences, and there was evidently 10 times. So Rachel and Leah says, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? And yeah, it was a dirty trick. They answered, there's nothing left for us. We are counted as foreigners. He doesn't even treat us as family anymore. Contemplate that for a minute. Rachel and Leah, his own daughters, are saying that he doesn't treat them as daughters anymore, as family. He's treating them as foreigners. He sold us, devoured our money. So everything that God has taken away from our father now belongs to us and our children. So whatever God has said to you, go ahead. So yeah, I mean, they definitely, I think you hit the nail on the head, Maureen, when you said, do they feel used by their father? I think that when you read through this text, you see that coming to the forefront. You see an animosity, a bitterness. And I think that brought the separation that was needed between the family, because there needed to be that cutoff. So that this departure would happen. But that's why I suggest that there was a bit of revenge in that Rachel stealing her father's household gods. So now, 3 days later, Laban gets the news that Jacob has fled, and he takes his brethren with him, and he pursues after him 7 days' journey. So it takes him a whole week to catch up. So basically, it takes him 10 days to overtake Jacob. 3 days for the news to reach him, and 7 days for him to finally catch up to him. Wow. Jacob was really moving. And what's the thing is they finally overtook him in Mount Gilead. So Jacob's almost home. Let's see if I can find Mount Gilead in my map real quick. Do I have Mount Gilead? Well, it might help if I wasn't looking at that map backwards. Okay. There's Mount Gilboa, Mount Hermon, Damascus. I think I know where it's at. I'm going to see. Okay, Mount Nebo. Okay. All right. So, yes, I think I'm about right. Hey, where'd you go? Uh-huh. All right. So let me bring me up back. Solid in there. Okay, so this is about where they catch up. I don't know if you can see that. Right where my finger is. So now he's coming in from way up here and finally catches up to, and Laban finally catches up to him right about here. I wish I'm going to have to print off some, but I can't. So, hello, Sam. No, not that one. There we go. So Laban catches up to Jacob on the 7th day after, or actually on the 10th day after Jacob leaves. Now, just before he overtakes him, the night before Laban overtakes Jacob, God appears to him. And yeah, I think I said hello, Sam. Hello, Sam. God appears to him at night and says this, you better watch it. And of course, I'm paraphrasing. He says, take heed. Do not speak good or bad to Jacob. Watch what you say. If Jacob, or if Laban was to speak good, Jacob might be persuaded to return. If Laban was to speak bad, there might fall out a war between the two, which would end up hurting. So God says, you better watch out what you say, either good or bad. Laban overtakes Jacob, and Jacob has pitched his tent in the mount. Laban with his brethren pitched in the Mount Gilead. And Laban says to Jacob, what have you done that you've stolen away unawares to me and carried away my daughters as captives taken with the sword? Wherefore didst you flee away secretly, steal away from me, did not tell me that I might have sent thee away with mirth and with songs, with tabret and harp, and hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters? You have now done foolishly in so doing. Now I could do you hurt, but your God spoke unto me, or rather the God of your father spoke unto me yesterday night, saying, take heed, you speak neither good nor bad. Now, though you would needs be gone, because you sore longs after your father's house, yet wherefore have you taken my gods? So, why have you done this? You didn't let me give you a proper send-off, and you didn't let me say goodbye to my daughters and my grandchildren. And then you went and stole my gods. You stole from me. But I can't do anything now. My hands are tied because the God of your father told me to watch what I say. And Jacob says, I know, right? I mean, here you've had a vision from the God and you are worried about your idols? Anyway, it is, Heather, it's very laughable. And Jacob says to Laban, I'm afraid. Sam says he's saying this with the motive he made up for a reason for chasing him. Well, I'm sure he chose to chase him for all of those reasons, Sam. I don't think he had to make up a reason. I think he chased him for all those reasons. But the original intent or the main intent was to actually try to grab not the idols, but to do something terrible and recover the flocks and all the goods. And he would have probably done that had it not been for God. And so he switches to the less how do you say it? He switched to the lesser sin, or not the lesser sin, but the more legal, the more legal, the one that he had more of a legal leg to stand on. That is the theft of his gods. Because he really didn't have a leg to stand on with regard to all of with regard to Jacob's family. He didn't have a leg to stand on with regard to Jacob's property, cows and sheep and goats, etc. But he did have a leg to stand on with the idols, the theft. And even then, a theft was not that egregious. It wouldn't have warranted death by any means. But Jacob says, I was afraid, for I said, perhaps you would take by force thy daughters from me. Jacob says, I was afraid you would take my wives from me. Jacob, even though Jacob's been a long time in Haran, in Padan Aram, he's still considered a stranger. Laban had more legal standing because he was a longtime citizen. The son of Bethuel, the son of Haran, or not Haran, but yeah, I guess son of whatever his name was. Now I gotta go look. Nahor. There it is. The son of Terah. They'd been there for three or four generations. Jacob was a relatively newcomer. So, there's some definite fear there. And yes, Laban is a conniving man. He's also a greedy man. In 32, with whomsoever you find your gods, let him not live. Before our brethren discern you what is yours, that is with me, and take it. And Jacob was able to say that because he didn't know that Rachel had stolen those gods, those idols. So Jacob gives Laban permission to search through all of his stuff. So Laban goes into Jacob's tent. He goes into Leah's tent. He goes into the Zilpah and Bilhah's tents. He goes into every tent, but he doesn't find them. He goes out of Leah's. He goes into Rachel's. Now, Rachel has taken the images. We know this because God has recorded it for us. Rachel has taken the images. Now, she puts them in the camel's furniture and sits upon them. And Laban searches all the tent but finds them not. And she says to her father, please, Father, don't make me stand up because, I'm in my time of the month. And I've got this terrible cramp. The apple didn't fall far from the tree, did it? Rachel is just as conniving as Laban. That's literally, you guys, Sam, you may not have thought about that before, but that's exactly what she's saying. The custom of women is upon me. That is meaning that it is her time of the month. And so she's sitting down. Well, usually that's probably because of cramps. So he searches, doesn't find the images because he's not looking under her. So Jacob, then Laban comes back and he's empty-handed. Jacob is mad. He's furious. He is just fit to be tied, and he lets Laban have it with both barrels. So what is my trespass, he says. What is my sin? Now, he's saying this before all these witnesses of Laban's. Laban has come with all of those relatives of his, with men that he trusts and with men of war, as it were. With Laban says he takes his brethren and he comes. And so Jacob lets him have it because Jacob has just shown Laban to be the fool before all of these witnesses. What is my trespass? What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued after me? And then you search all my stuff. What have you found that is yours? Set it here before me, that they may judge between us. Now, here we know Jacob has been with Laban 20 years. That means that he served 7 years for Rachel and was given Leah. Then he was given Rachel and had to serve another 7 years. That's 14. So then we have 6 more years wherein he had 11 of his sons and 1 daughter. And he received all this wealth. These 20 years have I been with you. Your ewes and your she-goats have not cast their young. There wasn't any abortions. Or they didn't fail to birth. And the rams of your flock I have not eaten. That which was torn of beast, I didn't bring it unto you. I bear the loss of it myself. Of my hand you required it. You required me to pay for the loss of any that was torn of beast. Whether it was stolen by day or stolen by night, I was charged with it. Or rather, I misspoke that. That which was torn of beast, I didn't bring it unto you. I bore the loss of it. Now, whether it was stolen by day or by night, I was required to pay for it. So in the day, the drought consumed me, frost by night. I didn't have sleep. I've been 20 years in your house. I've served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, 6 years for your cattle, and you've changed my wages 10 times. If it hadn't been for the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the God and the fear of Isaac, if he hadn't been with me, you would have sent me away now empty. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and he rebuked you yesterday night. So, Laban, he's upset too. And he says, these daughters are my daughters. These children are my children. And yeah, I mean, he's talking, of course, about them being his grandchildren. And he says, these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. What can I do to thee, do to this day unto you? To these my daughters, or unto their children which they've borne? Everything's mine. It was mine first, is what he's saying. We know what the action was later, Sam, relatively anyway. Hello, Ashaya. He's like, I can't do anything. These were all mine. These daughters are my daughters. Therefore, their children are my children. These cattle are my cattle because they were mine first. Now, shut your mouth. Let's make a covenant, I and you, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. So Jacob takes a stone, sets it up for a pillar. There's a lot of pillars around Israel, evidently. Jacob says unto his brethren. So he gathers all of his servants and his children and his wives, and he says, gather these stones. So they take these stones, they made a heap, and they did eat there upon that heap. And Laban, so basically think of it almost as a campfire area. You know, you're sitting on stones. Laban called it Jegar-Sahadutha. Jacob called it Galeed. Not Gilead, but Galeed. Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Galeed. And Mitzpah, for he said, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. This is the covenant. Now, Laban says, if you afflict my daughters, or if you take other wives beside my daughters, no man with us, God is witness between me and you. So basically, Laban is saying, you're not allowed to remarry or to marry again, to marry anybody else. And Jacob's probably saying, hey, that's going to be easy. Laban says to Jacob, behold this heap and behold this pillar which I have cast between me and thee. This heap be witness, this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. Now, this doesn't mean that they can't go and say hi to one another. This is saying they can't go and harm for the purpose of harming one another. And the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. That's interesting. Because Abraham and Nahor had the same God. Even though it says later that that Terah, or Abraham's fathers, did serve idols. I believe that was where was that at? was it? Don't have a lot of time right now. I'll have to find it for next week. Anyway. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. In other words, by God. And then Jacob offered sacrifice upon that mount, called his brethren to eat bread. They did eat and tarried all night in the mount. Early in the morning, Laban rose up, kissed his sons and daughters, and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned unto his own place. One of the things that you're going to see over and over and over again in the Bible is the reference to so-and-so, the son of such and such. For example, Hezekiah, the son of David. Even though Hezekiah was many generations removed from David, he was still a son of David because he was a descendant of David. And this is the same situation here where Laban kisses his sons. That means that he's talking about he's kissing all of Jacob's children. And, of course, Dinah and Rachel and Leah. All of his sons and daughters. Blessed them and then departed and returned unto his place. All right. Any questions over this chapter? I should say any comments or questions. I want to thank you all for being here, for the input, the comments, and great comments, great questions. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Sam. Thank you as well, Sister T. Thank you all for being here. Hoshea, Gloria, to add to those, as well as Reba, and anyone else that joined in. We're going to pick up in Genesis chapter 32 next week as we continue in our beginning at the beginning, lessons from Genesis studies. I want to again hope and pray that you will study, meditate upon Genesis 31 and the lessons we've learned from here as we study to show ourselves approved unto God, workmen that need not be ashamed, handling aright the word of truth. Stay blessed, stay strong, and I'll see you then. God bless in your walk with him.